Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed and today we are in the... Moving my camera back a little bit. We are in the Philosophical Midwifery book and we are understanding the cause of human problems, what we are calling the pathologos, a fundamental false idea about self and reality that we are carrying that's unsuspected because it was made wordlessly. We don't know we are carrying something that's functioning as a kind of psychic parasite, sapping our energy and preventing us from reaching our most meaningful, most significant, and most beautiful goals. So, really fantastic and exciting that this discovery has been made in the last 50 years or so. This pathologos, it's the only form of psychotherapy that's been verified empirically, which is interesting and significant to all those interested in understanding themselves and understanding their problems and becoming free of the problems that they are living out in their lives. So we are in chapter 2, which is of the pathologos, and we have just finished a section on the wordless transmission. So we're going to do a quick review of the wordless transmission, the fact that we came to this conclusion about ourselves and reality that we are carrying, that's sapping our energy and preventing us from reaching our goals. We are carrying that without knowing it because it was not made in words. Just repeating myself. Which is okay, because we are putting into words what hasn't yet been put into words. And then we're going on to blame and anger. Welcome to people in the chat. Yes, we're going on to blame and anger, which are bitter poisons. Right, so hopefully we will learn more about the functioning of anger. When can anger be okay? And what purpose does it solve? Or rather, anger comes up. It's part of the human condition. We have that. What are we supposed to do with it? How does it function? And how can we pick out the greatest kinds of functioning? Well, let's see what it has to say in the text. Here we are. Here's the text. So just a quick review of the last section, which was, this is a magic scroll where sometimes the words move around, just like in Harry Potter.
I'm looking for someone to...
Yep.
You're a wizard, Harry.
There we go. Wordless transmission starts here. Okay, so we'll review this together. The pathologos was never discussed. It was done in silence. And we talked about how if we did reflect upon it, if there was open reflection within the family, we would have deprived the pathologos from one of its necessary conditions. In other words, if we want a good relationship in our family, in our relationships, and in any group, we have to promote and encourage and take the time out for discussion. It's never, there's always time to talk. One of the ways that people can silence discussion is there's no time. Of course, there are many, many other ways. People can just get mad and storm out or threaten to kick you out. I was recently being threatened to be kicked out from a group because I wanted to talk about something that I thought was important. That sucked. But if you are hosting a good group or doing something good, it's important to encourage discussion. The tyrant silences the logos, as we are reading in the Republic on Fridays. Okay, so discussion. The common feature of every pathologos, its distinguishing feature is that it's a conclusion about a most formative event. So it is a conclusion, you could say that's part A. Part B, about a formative event. And part C, its content has never been expressed in words. So we are going through the process of surfacing the pathologos by learning how to describe what previously has never been suspected in words. So we're learning something. This is important. A lot of people are blocked from freeing themselves from their problems because they think they know it all already. Oh, I know my problem. I know what my problem is. I can't learn from I don't need to learn from somebody else. I've got it all figured out. Well, that's not true. If it were true, you wouldn't have the problem. An answer has to function as an answer, otherwise it's not the true answer. In fact, as we will see as we continue to read, once you start to discover about this pathologos that you don't know you have, so how can you know the cause of your problems if you don't know that it's there? It's impossible, literally. So we have to keep an open mind. Replace our certainty with wonder and curiosity, which we're learning a lot about in Meno, the state of aporia. We're on the hunt for what is virtue in the Meno, which we read on this channel. And one of the things is, hey, you got to be open-minded, pal, says Socrates to Meno. Aporia, being puzzled. They use a metaphor of being stung by a stingray and being completely numb, or all out at sea, you could say. As a metaphor for being stung and puzzled and curious. This is a necessary state of mind for learning. Because you literally can't know your pathologos. It's not how it works. Until you master midwifery. So we're here to learn something new. We're learning how to describe and surface the pathologos. We surface it by describing things in a different way. So we're learning how to describe our states of mind, our problems, ourselves, our reflections, in a way that will end up surfacing the problems. That's the dialectic. Why? Because the dialectic is the structure and use of the logos, the new language we're learning, the language of mind, the language of self, the language of reality. That's the logos. But we have to use it. And the more that we reflect on the dialectic, we see it's a progression of causes. Let's bring up the... Here we go. Here's okay, we've got a fresh board, so if there are these 4 sections of the dialectic, the definition then functions. This causes that. And this functioning then allows having been affected by that functioning. So let's say it better. So the thing itself you've defined. Now this defined thing then functions. It's as a logical, rational rolling over. There's a progression. Having been affected, this other can then affect other others. Causal relationship. And then, of course, having been affected, those other others can relate back to the start. We are seeing a progression of causes, and in midwifery, we're going back. We see the effects of our problem. We feel them. We come to conclusions. Our life has an inevitable conclusion, a kind of failure that we call fate. But we want to work back. What causes this, our life ending in this way? Oh, I can see all of these manifestations of certain inner voice and thoughts all the way through all of the other areas of my life. Well, where did that come from? What's the original state of mind? And what's the definition of myself and reality that's most causal? So by learning to reflect through the dialectic, which is again also what we do in philosophy, to find what is true, but to learning to reflect on what's false, our problems, through the dialectic, we can surface the original cause. That's this pathologos that we're doing. In the chat, how do you handle when communication doesn't work and people still behave and repeat certain behaviors and cross boundaries of mutual respect? Well, respect is a key word. Just as a quick aside, respect can mean lots of things, but it's handy to know that when we have a pathologos, we project our idea of our personal beliefs, or preferences. We project them onto the world. We project them. So this is the shadows on the wall of the cave in Plato. We project. This causes our interpretation. What we're doing by reading in this way together, we're learning how to see or read without interpretation. Now, the word respect takes those interpretations and says that they are universals, universal absolutes. And then the word respect has another level of functioning. It then takes those universal absolutes and makes them a demand. A demand. And then the next step is, hey, so let's use an example. I really don't like wearing hats at the table. This is something my dad said. It's a personal preference. There's nothing absolute about that. It's just a personal preference. But instead of expressing that as a personal preference, we say, oh no, this is a interpretation of the world and it's an absolute and you have to do it. You have to demand it. And then if you don't, you get punishment. You just... Why is my keyboard's not working very well today? You deserve punishment. Well, actually, there's one more step. If you do not obey the demand, you are, if not obeying, you get an enemy image. So this is respect is tied to image thinking. Instead of saying, hey, why do you want to wear the hat at the table? What are your reasons? Let's reflect together in a conversation. You are an enemy image if you don't. So we can call that dehumanizing. And so there's no logos here. So we can say also no logos. No logos, and what are we reading about? The importance of no logos and no discussion. I'm already right. What I say is respectful, not wearing a hat at the table, is already right. There's no need for discussion. There's no need for logos. Which is, again, the conditions for the pathologos transfer. This is my personal belief about self and reality that I am demanding, that I am projecting onto the world. I don't think it's just my beliefs. I think it's a projection and interpretation that makes it universal. I think it's true. It's true. That's how belief functions. You think it's true. Then I make the demand. So in regular society, it's you use whatever power you have. I'm going to kick you out of the group, or I'm going to get you fired, or I'm going to complain to the manager, or whatever. But in the family, the threats can involve death. I took you into this life, I can bring you out of it, is a funny joke that Bill Cosby would make back in the old days, but it's terribly, it's not something to be laughed about, because you are, to make it a demand, there can be threats involved. So if you ever watch a TV show and you hear the word respect, count to 20. I guarantee you within 20 seconds there will be a threat of violence, or there will actually be violence or some sort of conflict. Guaranteed. Because that's the word respect. That's what it does. It's a dangerous, dangerous word. Now, not just respect, but other words can function in this way. We can say things like respect, or inappropriate. It's inappropriate. That joke's inappropriate. It's not saying I don't like it, it's saying it's objectively wrong and you must obey me or else. Inappropriate. Or other ones like un-American. It's un-American to do whatever I don't like. And politicians use this one a lot. The American people don't want this. Bullshit, that's what you don't want, but you are projecting it. Okay, so these are all against the logos. First of all, because we want truth, not personal opinions. We want to read and not project interpretations. It should be the same color, really. Project. We want, we're on the quest to find what we don't know yet, or we haven't uncovered yet. The truth about the reality. We don't want to do demands. We are learning what Socrates calls the gentle way, the dialectic. Invite people to reflect. We don't want to enemy image people. We want to see their humanness, and we want to encourage logos and discussion. Sorry, I've gone a bit off your question, but this is a fun way of reflecting on the path of logos and how it's emanated into the English language, or the language of where humanity is, because all cultures have this way of utilizing the path of logos in everyday speak. So, if they don't obey, then we have the next step, enemy image, and then that enemy image, and here's another word that can be very dangerous, deserve. They deserve whatever punishment for not obeying. So that's where the one person in the soap opera starts punching the other person, or they pull out their guns, or whatever. Let's see if it goes all the way to the top. There's some personal beliefs held by Netanyahu of the Jewish state, that he says, hey, by the way, they are not just personal preferences. I dislike brown people. I dislike people who aren't Jewish. Does he say it's a universal? So you can say God. God says so. God says so. That's a way of taking a personal belief or preference, project it onto the world, because they will, rationally speaking, God would never want to kill people. Doesn't matter. Beliefs have no association with truth. There is no fundamental connection between beliefs and truths. They're in different categories. Beliefs are not about truth. They're about images and preferences and your upbringing. You could say, well, couldn't some beliefs be true? Yeah, that's how you start learning. That's why we read Socrates. That's why we read this book. But they don't have to be true. They've got nothing to do with truth. You can trust that what you're reading from Socrates has some truth behind it, but only as so far as you can develop understanding. So this cycle starts with beliefs. It's the level of development we are as individuals within our society and as a species. Belief thinking. Beliefs are used to oppress, because it's nothing to do with truth. You can pretend they're true, which causes violence. If you can manipulate the beliefs and manipulate the violence of the people, you can oppress. So on a mass scale, deserve punishment, that's code word for violence. How do you allow for violence to happen? Because you need violence to oppress people. Through capitalism, through fascism, through the king oppressing the peasants in ancient times, and so on and so on. This. You can't just say, oh, do what I say or else. You can't say, I want to have all the money. That's my personal preference. I'm going to use violence to enforce it. No, you can't say that. Yes, Yes. Oh, sorry, I'm going to check in more often with the chat. Right, good guess. Justification. You need these extra steps. So you could say, hey, isn't capitalism just slavery with extra steps? Yes. But those extra steps allow us to justify capitalism and extracting all the wealth from our planet and from people into the hands of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And why don't they just kiss each other and get married? Because they love money so much. Okay? So these extra steps make the difference. But what we are doing is we are through midwifery. Okay, this is true on the scale of society, but it's also true with what we're after, our pathologos. Because what we are doing is, hey, this violence is needed for oppression, slavery, and the destruction of self. And that also can apply to our planet and our species on a mass scale. So in midwifery, what we are doing is we are seeing, hey, my destruction of my self goals. I give up on my most meaningful goals. I sacrifice my understanding. I think there's something better to do than midwifery and philosophy. I need to go and be the best sports ball player. Or I need to make lots of money, or I have to, I don't know, anything. Somehow I'm undermining my self goals. But what happens when I pursue my self goals? There is some sort of violence I do towards myself. I tell myself I can't do it. I tell myself I'm not good enough. I tell myself I don't deserve to seek my highest goals. And by the way, you can say, hey, the word deserve is also tied to anger. Anger. I'm angry at myself. I should have done better. Or I shouldn't be doing this. So then we trace this back. Oh, hang on a second. There's no logos or discussion involved in this kind of attack or violence or anger against myself that caused me to undermine my goals, or doesn't even have to be myself. Someone else can walk along and mirror this kind of voice that can trigger you. Oh, no. This is a fantastic detour. It's so relevant. It's exactly relevant to what we're reading. So, I'm talking about, it's rude to wear your hat at the table, my dad would say. I didn't like that because I like wearing hats. See? And I thought that was stupid. And I also didn't like that it was just a vague justification to project it as a universal truth, to make a demand. Even at this stage, as a child, I hated being made a demand. Screw you. You're making demands? You think you're better than me? You think you can tell me what I can do? You're more important than me? Don't I have a voice? Don't I have logos? Nope. So long as I am playing this bullshit game, I can stop the discussion. You are wrong, I am right. Why? Because they're my personal preferences. Not just my personal preferences. These are absolute truths. So no need for discussion. What's Netanyahu doing? Hey, my personal racist and Zionistic beliefs, God says so. They're absolutes. So there's no need for discussion. I'm just going to genocide your people. So that's, hey, how do you convince the children of the Israeli army to go out and murder children? Murder even younger children? To genocide a people? They have to deserve it. Every single one of those people pulling those triggers to shoot the children in Palestine right now have this going on in their minds. They're angry at these Palestinian children who are starving to death because they have been living in an open-air prison for many years. They're angry at them. They deserve, what do they call them? They dehumanize them by saying they are savages. You have TikTok? Literally, there are Israeli soldiers saying, hey, look at these savages. They are not human. They are animals. They deserve violence. Yeah, so these are the steps. You have to dehumanize them in order to silence the logos. Well, the belief silence the logos. We are moving from beliefs, in particular pathologos beliefs. So my personal preferences, which usually stem from the pathologos. So even behind this is the pathologos. Why? Because the pathologos is the most fundamental false belief about yourself and reality, and all other beliefs and prejudices and religions and so forth that you get later on that you can justify as, hey, so beliefs about America as society has to fit with your pathologos. For example, or same thing with your religious beliefs, it has to fit within your pathologos. So if you have a pathologos that because you're a woman, you're less than a man, you can't accept a cultural belief that says women are better than men, or a religion. So it's no coincidence that cultural beliefs subjugate women. It's no coincidence that religious beliefs blame women for the creation of sin. Say women are less than men. Women are to be treated like objects or cattle, owned and so forth. Women should not speak up in church or speak up in society and must obey the men. Literal things written in the Christian Bible. Terrible, terrible things. So the pathologos is the root cause, which manifests as our cultural and religious and personal and family beliefs. That's called the milieu. We call this the milieu. And I can never spell this word because it's such a weird word to spell. Let's find out how we spell milieu for the millionth time. All right, we'll come across it in the text. Milieu. Oh, woman. Yes. Very important for you. So you could start off, well, hang on a second. Because the cultural and societal and religious pathologos fundamentally dehumanize and vilify women, which makes it very attractive to men because you are saying, hey, just by the fact that you're a man, you're already up a ladder of development. Now, the real ladder of development is the logos. So this is why it's very appealing. We are here to learn the logos, which is why we read Socrates, and surface and remove the pathologos so we can climb this ladder of development. Higher levels of understanding, ultimately dianoia, which is understanding not just the physical world, but the realm of being, which is eternal and immortal and the cause of the physical world. So understanding the divine, you could say. But every level of understanding, so understanding is this rail of the ladder, corresponds to a different state of mind. So your state of mind improves as your understanding does. For instance, if you start with a level of understanding called nihilism, which is a way of thinking or a belief structure that says there's nothing, everything is illusion, you might feel really crappy, really lonely, really depressed. But then the higher our understanding goes, the more we're open to enlightenment visions or visions of reality, ultimately leading to self. This is our purpose. But if you say, hey, you don't have to climb this ladder, which takes work, which takes effort, well, takes play really, because it's the best game in town. But instead of doing all that, you can just keep your dumb pathologos. You're already up the ladder because, hey, don't women stink? Don't brown people stink? So that's the appeal. That's how people market to the pathologos. Why would they want to market to the pathologos? Because people who do that are con artists. We call them grifters nowadays. We could call them con artists or fascists or capitalists, and so on and so on. They want the stuff. They want the power. So they have to create this so they can have, so they can create the violence needed to oppress. So, because a demand itself conflicts with a human need for logos, for discussion, for autonomy, for having your self goals. If our destiny is to reach the self, this isn't made through demands. You can't demand you reach your destiny. You can invite people into playing the game of mastering the logos through the dialectic in order that they can themselves not get a belief from you. That's grifting, that's con artist, that's oppression. But they can, with you, develop through logos and discussion their own understanding, which climbs the ladder, and test their own understanding in their own experiences, which is the other side of the ladder. And I would love it if my keyboard would work. There we go. But you can't demand people play. Play is an invitation. Understanding and experience is an invitation. Whereas oppression, violence, and pathologos isn't. It's a demand. So this is the structure. Personal pathologos that we get from childhood, that's what we're looking for. Allows us to accept societal beliefs, personal beliefs. That's what we say, hey, it's respectful to always obey your elders. Really? That sounds stupid and wrong. Doesn't matter. It's nothing to do with truth. This is to do with oppression. Beliefs are nothing to do with truth. But I love my beliefs. I love them dearly. Yes, that's how they can function as oppression. It wouldn't be much of an oppressive tool if you didn't love it. Hitler couldn't do what Hitler did if people didn't love him. Trump couldn't do what Trump is doing if people don't love him. You can love what's false. Because beauty, or at least the image, this is image thinking. Got images here. Images of beauty don't have to be true. Now, what's curious is, why do we think that they are? Because up here, once we reach the realm of being, which is not physical, you don't experience being through your physical senses, you experience it through ousia, the function that your mind has to turn around and know itself. Then we experience reality, and the aspects of reality we understand in philosophy. That's why Socrates only talks about justice itself. Not in the physical world, the realm of opinions and images and violence and beauty itself, truth itself. These are all aspects of being. And in the realm of being, yes, beauty is there and truth is there. So there is a connection between beauty and truth in reality. But our soul mistakes our physical world for reality. Just like in a dream. In a dream, you wouldn't feel all the ups and downs and be really scared or be really engrossed if you didn't think it was real. Your soul is mistaking the images you experience in dreams for reality in order to get invested in it. And then you wake up and you realize, I can't believe I thought that was real for a few moments. Same thing with our physical world. We are mistaking our physical world for real because that's what we remember. We don't remember we've dreamt before. We don't remember we've lived a previous life. We don't remember we were in being before the physical world. So we get really invested, which is, you could say it's actually a good thing because it means we have a lot of reasons, a lot of motivation to learn the dialectic. Because if this physical world we are taking to be real gives us the pathologos, which gives us the problems, puts us on the train tracks of fate to our disaster, then we've got a lot of reasons to learn this dialectic that will allow us to free ourselves from our false beliefs, free ourselves from the pathologos, free ourselves from the nightmares we experience in life and in our dreams. The nightmares and dreams reflect the same problems you have in your world to give you the same message. Oh, you've taken a break from the physical world belief systems to reflect. Oh, good for you. Oh, I'm glad that you found me too. Yeah, isn't it wonderful? So yeah, this makes sense. So there's something about this when we reflect on the logos. It does seem to add up. There is truth here. So to free ourselves from our problems, either in our dreams or in our waking world, and to reach our highest states of mind, our highest understanding, and our highest goals or our destiny, both require the dialectic. The dialectic applied to what's false and what's true. And equally so, this little model gives you a kind of metric in which to judge people. All human beings are on some level of development of the logos, so somewhere up the y-axis, but also have some level of addiction or enslavement to their problems. So how far along, how close to their problems are they? Or have they been doing work in midwifery so they're closer this way? They've freed themselves from a lot of their pathologos. Right, psychology wasn't cutting it. Yes. Well, you'll be happy to know that the only form of psychology that's been proven is what we're reading here, and the validation studies are in the back of the book. See, lovely graphs like that. But of course, it's not because it's proven that it makes it true. It's not because it works in the physical world. If you know that what we are learning about is the truth of mind, of course it's going to be the only thing that works. It's like you've got there are lots of ways that you could eat a banana, but the only one that works is eating it by putting it into your mouth hole. Now you could say, well, that's the only one that's been tested to work, that actually gives you nourishment. But if you know that that's how you eat, then of course it's the only thing that works. Of course you put it in your mouth. That's what we're learning here. So we're all going to be somewhere along this, but also somewhere along this. So as we read anything, we've got to ask, okay, what's the level of vision of what we're reading? And that's this part of the ladder. But what's the level of... Right. Oh. Yes, I'll just quickly finish this. What's the level of understanding of their vision, and what's the level of vision? But also what's the level of their problem, which gives you a nice handy graph to graph people in. And everyone's going to be at this level. We have to judge people so we can avoid getting involved with these sorts of people and avoid getting wrapped up in their problems. But also because we want to help people ultimately. If we go through this process to free ourselves from our problems and reach the understanding and experience of the truth of reality, and go beyond that to know even the cause of that, notice we are going to higher and higher levels of causes, then it might be nice to come back and help other people. So what you're seeing in, so psychology plays the exact same game as this because they don't have the logos. The logos is the principle of mind through the dialectic. Instead, they have beliefs and preferences about how to understand people. Are you a cognitive behavioralist? Are you a person-centered counselor? Do you do transactional analysis? What's your personal beliefs? Are you a Freudian? Whatever. But instead of using the words, hey, after I project this onto the world, my personal beliefs, I won't say you are disrespectful or inappropriate or un-American or God said so. I will use another word that we got from chat. I will call you a narcissist. You are a narcissist. I have made my personal preferences true, I have made it a demand. If you don't obey it, you get an enemy image. What sort of enemy image? Well, politicians might say un-American. Parents might say, well, people on soap operas on TV will often use the word respect. People in a workplace will use the word inappropriate, but psychologists will use the word narcissist or sociopath or whatever. Right, and yeah, you get stuck in that belief. You get stuck there, you get entrenched. And you might really love that belief, and you'll get addicted to that belief. Now, we are realizing that we need to overcome that certainty and addiction and love for our personal beliefs, even if they kind of helped us get a job, because I'm a very successful politician if all I do is use the word un-American when I want to project my beliefs, or I'm a very good psychologist if all I do is use the word narcissist when everyone disagrees with my beliefs. I need to sacrifice whatever fame or certainty or money that I get to be a better person. Now, I'm not saying you don't get fame and money if you learn truth, but those are the things that can make the beliefs really appealing. So then you silence the logos. Hey, maybe I'm not a narcissist. Excuse me? Where's your PhD in psychology? Philosophy has the same problem. One of the reasons why I have this channel is to show that philosophy is everybody's game. It's not just for academics with PhDs. That's crazy talk. It's literally what we're here for, every single one of us. Otherwise, why the heck would we get a pathologos? If we didn't have the capacity to free ourselves from it by learning the logos. Learning the logos is literally philosophy, that's all it is. Which is a new language. It's a language of self and reality. But learning this language is silenced if you dehumanize them, and if you don't obey, you deserve, there's another dangerous word, deserve, and you deserve punishment, which is the way that we shoehorn in violence. You can't just say, do what I say or I'll kill you, but you can say, maybe you deserve it. Didn't your people do 9/11, Iraq? No. But forget about that. Pretend that they did, says America. Now, we really just want to invade you and take all your resources. But you deserve it because 9/11. For like 10 years, 9/11 was a buzzword. I think Family Guy and South Park parodied it. Like someone was running for student council and all they would say was 9/11 and everyone would cheer. Why? Because you allow people a justification for playing out the worst aspects of their humanity. Our pathologos is not knowingness, it's the pretending that you are knowing. So how does a guru function? The dialectic. How does a fake guru pretending to be smarter than everyone functions? Violence. Do what I say or I'll whack you with a stick. That's why the least educated people are more attracted to fascists. You can pretend to be wise by acting out your violence. But you can't just kick someone, that's assault. But if they deserve it because they're brown and 9/11, or whatever the Israeli people either orchestrated or allowed to happen that they have been using. Hamas, don't you hate Hamas? Doesn't Hamas mean that they deserve genocide? No, never. People might want to look at what caused Hamas. Because the people who want to play out their slavery might want to create the conditions for this very simple game. A lot of people say, hey, you can't fly 2 planes into 2 buildings and have 3 Trade Center buildings collapse. That's simple math. Jet fuel doesn't burn steel frames. Not once in the history of humanity has a building collapsed upon itself after being hit by a plane. then what happened? Oh, creating the conditions to, they call it false flag, to justify this cycle. It's the same cycle. It's the cycle that happens globally. It's the same cycle that happens in groups. It's the same cycle that happens in families. And it's the cycle we play out to ourselves time and time again, so long as we are enslaved by our pathologos beliefs. Fundamental pathologos we don't know we have that allows us to be attracted to certain beliefs within society, including religion, that we then project onto the world. We don't see the world as it is. We don't read books as they're written. We project. We say that our projections are true. Then we demand everyone does it. If you don't, there's a threat. There's a threat behind every demand because it's not a request. Request is, would you like to? Demand is, do it or else. If you don't obey, then you can dehumanize them. You are a savage. You are a slut to woman. Like right now, OnlyFans detected as a way of dehumanizing women whenever they have an opinion. Or what are they saying of the Palestinians? Oh, they're savages. What are the Jews call what are the Nazis call the Jews? Vermin. Trump's using the same word right now. This is just a word that dehumanizes. And what's the justification? Respect, inappropriate, un-American, God says so, narcissist. These are all ways of creating the enemy image. What does it do? It functions to silence the logos and discussion, the very thing we're learning how to do when we read this book, which then means that you use the word deserve, and therefore, because of this, you deserve punishment, teaching you a lesson. That's how we sneak violence into society. What's violence needed for? Oppression. What's oppression? It's the destruction or subjugation of the self. Why is that important? We are here to know and show the self. This is our highest goal. So this functions to stop our highest goal. So you can say this little mind map here is a description of the process of problems. This is how problems manifest. In here is anger. So what are we doing? So what? Yes, savages, yes. In the 60s, in America, when African American people were fighting to be seen as human beings, that's what they were being called. There's no reason for logos or discussion. That's for rational people, not these savages, which is just a way of dehumanizing them so they can subjugate them through violence in order to enslave them. Slavery. Yes, self-justification and stuff. Yes, so what are we doing here? So what? Well, first of all, it's helpful to understand that this is the mind map that's being played out mindlessly in society, in our species, in groups. If you're ever involved in a group, you can probably hunt for this dynamic and sniff it out. But if you do find it in your school, if you're a teacher or if you're a boss, or if you're hosting a group, then what do? That's why we do philosophy. Given that this is what we're doing, what do we do instead? We establish principles. In the Republic, he calls them laws, because he's talking about the laws of a state to guide a city, but the city is a metaphor for our own souls. So can we establish principles of the logos that we can follow so that this doesn't happen, and if it does happen, we can catch it, we can reflect on it, and can we reflect on it in a way that we begin with our problem, not getting our goal, being enslaved, being blocked, tracing it back to a state of mind, tracing it back to a demand, tracing it back to an interpretation, tracing it back to some milieu beliefs, family, societal, cultural beliefs, or religious beliefs, and then tracing that back to the big daddy, the Papa Smurf that we need to capture, to use a if we're Gargamel, if you ever watched the Smurfs, Gargamel wants to capture Papa Smurf. I don't know if he does, but Papa Smurf is the big Smurf. The pathologos. We are establishing principles we can use in our soul and in everything we do to trace our problem through a causal chain to its first cause. Now, the first cause is the pathologos view of self and reality, which is fascinating because the exact same dialectic, so here, is used to find the first cause of everything. The first cause of everything isn't the false belief about self and reality, it's the true self and reality. So philosophy is using the dialectic to find the first cause of everything, and if it's our goal, we call it the first and final cause. So we are emanating from self and we are returning through the logos and dialectic, but we are returning having mastered a new art. Similarly, our human lives have its first cause, everything up in our childhood, up until we got the pathologos, we forget. We've left that behind. We have to go back to it and continue our development. But from here, from childhood, everything in our life has been a manifestation or an emanation of our pathologos, belief about self and reality, image of self and reality. That we play as a dialectic, it becomes your mask, it becomes your persona, it becomes how you relate to the world and yourself, and then eventually it becomes your identity. So that's the first cause that causes our problems, but the dialectic applied to the pathologos, or what we're reading, philosophical midwifery, is doing the same thing, returning to the first cause, but not the first cause of reality, it's the first cause of our false belief about reality. It's the exact same dynamics. Only midwifery helps us to find the first and final cause of what's false, which frees us to climb this ladder because we don't have that internal voice oppressing us. It gives us a freedom to find the first and final cause of real self and reality. So let's check in with the chat for a little bit. So that's so all of this is to do with that one word, and I know it wasn't what you're talking about, but we'll go back to the question. In IFS, there's what we call the exiled child, manager, and firefighter. The firefighter does everything to surpass the exiled child, and the manager keeps them busy to process emotions. Right, that's important. So, in order for this to be a problem, in order for your pathologos to be a problem, not only is there a first cause, there have to be roles that maintain it. So when we sacrifice our true goals as a child, we're given a role within the family. Are you a peacekeeper? Are you a firefighter? Are you a manager? Are you a Cinderella? What's your role? So, let's go back to that question, going back through the chat to the first question. I'm going to take a quick break to top up my coffee. I'll be back in 2 minutes. So ponder what I've just said, and I'll be back in 2 minutes to address the chat. And back. So, all of that was just to point out a word that was used, and our friend in chat wasn't using it in this way. Of course, it was just using it in a regular way to mean, what if somebody starts acting like a jerk? But it gave us a good launching pad to reflect on the dynamics that exist within our language that we take for granted. Because what we are seeing is, in order to learn this new art of philosophical midwifery, we have to learn a new language, learning to describe what was previously unexpressed in words. Just as when we read Socrates, we have to read the Balboa translation. Why? Because the words are new words. The key words in philosophy to follow the same structure, reverting through causes, following the dialectic, also is the utilization of a new language. Dianoia means understanding, but all of the translations of Socrates use the word understanding. But dianoia doesn't just mean understanding. It specifically means understanding the realm of being, not physical stuff. So if Socrates is saying, hey, the way of getting enlightenment or the experience of true being happens through dianoia, then we're going to get very confused if we have the English word understanding. You mean like understanding philosophy at like the way that we do it at college? No. You can't reach enlightenment that way. That's why there are no enlightened... Okay, I won't say that there are no enlightened scholars, but traditionally, the way the education system is set up right now, it's divorced from spirituality. Philosophy, you can't reach the truth about self and reality, which is the goal of philosophy, unless you experience the truth of self and reality. It's an enlightenment experience. By the way, the cognitive function, or the cognitive function of experiencing the realm of being is nous. All of the translations of Socrates have used the word knowledge. But knowledge is a different language, different word. You can know how to fix a car. You can know that How You Met Your Mother is on 7 o'clock on Thursdays. But that's not nous. So dianoia, nous, ousia, what we've been talking about, reflecting on ourselves. Reflecting on ourselves to follow that causal chain to find the first cause of our problems. And also the final cause of our problems. Once you've sufficiently understood your pathologos, you can be free of your problems, which is neat.
Wow.
That's a kind of ousia in our physical world. Dianoia, reflecting on the nature of self and being, that's a kind of dianoia in the physical world. Sorry, a kind of ousia, reflecting on self. And in midwifery, this false self. But that same ousia graduates or levels up. So we have this sound effect. Are the sound effects coming through? I hope they are. To the actual beholding of mind itself. So we need the word ousia, and that beholding of reality, that's ousia. So we have to be learning a new language. And also identifying the little tricks that keep us tied to our old language. Like the word respect. But also, the fact that we're learning a new language means we can't cross our arms and say, midwifery, I know what my problems are. Or, equally so, if you're at college, or... Okay. Philosophy is not a thing done in college. It's an everyday thing. It's for everyone. It's the people's learning. Philosophy should not be gatekept. It's everyday. Hey, you meet for a coffee with your friend. You want to reflect on what you've been wondering about or seeing in philosophy. And when we say you meet for coffee, I have a sip of coffee, which is just a fun thing. So you can't cross your arms and say, hey, I already know my problems. I already know the nature of reality. If you can't. Number one, because the cause of your problem is unsuspected. That's one of the key features of what we've read here. It is the distinguishing feature of the pathologos is you don't know it. So get that out of your mind straight away. But also, you can't know it for another reason. It's a new language. We don't have the word pathologos in our English language yet. We do now. But we have to learn it. Same thing with philosophy. We don't have the word nous, or dianoia, or ousia, or autos, which is self. We have to use that. That's why we only read the Balboa translation. Now, you might say, hey, don't you read a regular translation with Mindy on a Friday? Thursday in America, I think. With your Republic She does that because you can get a PDF for free online, and for her own other reasons. But also, whenever we hit a key term, I try and point out, oh, by the way, I'm also reading the Balboa, and you can see the key term is actually this. So she's doing it more, I don't know, she has her reasons, but you need to be in the Balboa because you need those key language terms. And, you know, to her credit, she often does read the Balboa before the stream and looks for those keywords that are mistranslated, and sometimes. So that's good. So back to the chat. So the question was, how do you handle when communication doesn't work and people still behave and repeat certain behaviors and cross those boundaries of mutual respect, or they be a jerk? That's a good question. I think that might be the fundamental question. I think that might be really touching the heart of what we're here to do. Because involved in that one question, you could say, well, how do I know what the right way of acting is? And I don't have to know it for certain, but I can recognize when somebody, you don't have to know everything to be able to recognize problems or to see some things. But if I recognize some things are wrong, what do I do? And what if people are crossing their arms and saying, I'm not talking to you, I'm closed off? What they're saying essentially is, I am so addicted to my false beliefs that I'm refusing to learn anything new or engage in communication. In fact, one of the features of the pathologos is the counterattack and its defense. So the pathologos wants to defend itself against the things that can challenge its existence. What challenges its existence? Communication, logos. So if we ever find ourselves saying, no words for you, like the soup Nazi, no soup for you, but no logos for you, no, we're not going to follow the words that unfold in our conversation, the rationality of that. We're not going to let the self and reality lead the conversation, because the words, the unfolding of words that happen when you're in a flow state, which is one of a higher levels of being, happens organically. You start to notice coincidences. You start to notice that key words will come up that will help the conversation itself. There is an ousia, or self-reflective nature of the logos. You can let the logos lead. That's what we're doing, following the logos. But if we're insisting on pushing our personal opinions and beliefs and not following the logos, we notice we have a block. Or it could be a block. We could write it down somewhere. Pull out a notepad or your phone and take a note on your app. I caught myself trying to block the flowing of the logos when I had coffee with my friend Mary today, and take notes at what was the state of mind. I was really angry, or I was really frustrated or something. And then take a note of what happened right before you did that. It's when she was really wondering about this and any words that came up. I said, no, you can't wonder about that. That's blasphemy. So write the word blasphemy down. So that's when we catch ourselves not following the logos, or a really handy way to recognize you might be getting information about your problem, which you are to write down, because those are the clues. Like Sherlock Holmes, he has a notepad, he takes down all the clues, and then he goes home, he goes back to Baker Street, and he talks with his friend Watson, reflects on those clues to try and piece it together afterwards. Same thing with us. But Sherlock Holmes is a lesser version of what we're doing. We're doing the real thing. So we take the notes when they come up in our life, and then afterwards we go home or go wherever, meet your friend for coffee, and reflect on, oh, I said coffee. Reflect on those notes in a way where you can, that's Usia, piece those parts together as a whole, using what we're learning of midwifery. So we are doing real Sherlock Holmes stuff. Now in Sherlock Holmes, there's a joke that Watson is just there so that Sherlock can bounce his own ideas. Like Sherlock Holmes is so much smarter. But he still recognizes the value of having a friend to talk to and reflect on, just so you can bounce those clues around. Following the logos, looking for an insight. Now for you, that might be this channel. That might be the Discord. That might be the comments section in the YouTube. But if you do find a friend who might be open to this quest, you're a lucky one, because philosophy isn't a solo quest. You need to do that reflection, even if it's with yourself, talking to the walls, talking to me, even though it's recorded. So that's the significance of communication. And the question is, chat, is what if we with people who don't want to do that? That's a big one. Because what we are doing, we are encouraging ourselves and challenging ourselves to be better people, to evolve. Like the Dunning-Kruger effect, the people who are most ignorant are most certain of their ignorance. We're not doing that. We're replacing the certainty with openness and curiosity to actually learn a new language and master a new art. It's an art. It's an art because there is an ideal, unlike modern psychology, which is just opinions. We call it an eclectic tradition. There's a whole bunch of opinions you can pick from. And just make up your own. But this is actually true. So there's actually a model. That's the logos and the dialectic. So there's a model. It's understandable while we're reading it. But then you can use that understanding and vision of the ideal to benefit people. So the question is, what if people are blocked? What do we do? And you can say, well, you could actually just say what you see. Hey, by the way, you might not recognize this. This might be your blind spot, because as we are seeing, it's unsuspected because our pathologos is unsuspected because it wasn't put in words. But this is what you're doing. You might want to reflect on it. Or maybe throw them a question. Oh, that's an interesting way of, this is what it is that you're doing. This is the fact that it's not disrespectful, but it's unfair, or it's harming me, or it's something like that. A word that points to how it's functioning. But by the way, here's a question. Now, questions are interesting because it has the potential to open you up for that reflection, to take you out of that certainty. But really, I don't know. Because even if we have a great community of people here who go all the way through this book and practice it and master the art of midwifery and the art of philosophy, we still are human beings in a world where that's a very rare skill, a rare art. What do we do with the people who are blocked, and blocked so much that they refuse to even reflect or refuse to even talk? I don't know. But that is a fantastic question. Just as we're saying, we might want to throw them a question. Equally so, take that as a question, write it down somewhere, carry it with you. To carry a question is to be on a quest. And the more that you can carry that question, you can polish it up. You might be able to phrase the question in even fewer words, get it nice and shiny. But the longer you can carry that question, the bigger the payoff is going to be when you get it, when you get the answer. And this is a big one, because it's the human problem. You could say, well, if the Orange Book has already been written, Philosophical Midwifery, if we have the Balboa translations of Socrates, so we have the actual words of Socrates now, how come the world is still screwed up? What do we do? How do we relate to the ignorance of other human beings that we share the planet with? Especially when there is genocide and exploitation and fascism and capitalism and needless suffering. That's a fantastic question. I also have that question. I think it's fundamental to the question of humanity. I think this is one of the biggest questions that we have. And I encourage you to keep it, hold on to it, polish it up. Hey, practice giving it to people. You meet someone who claims to be wise or you think is clever, ask them it. See how it goes. See if they give you an answer. See if they light your spark. But that's a good one. They won't let up on the behavior. Yeah, well, so what happens when the stakes get even bigger? Yeah, good question. I think we're going to be learning as we read how to speak up, because that's the same thing with our parents. If we get our pathologos from our parents, and they are it's the most certain they've ever been on anything, when they gave us our pathologos in the origin scene, or rather gave us the conditions for us to pick it up, they are going to be the least likely to change, and they're going to be acting in the worst possible way, crushing yourself, crushing your development, crushing your potential for development. What do we do then? How do we answer people who are playing out their pathologos? It's a good question. We're reading the Meno right now on this channel. One day we do philosophy, one day we do midwifery. And Socrates does mention something about this. He says, people who are bad faith actors, we would call them. People who just use language to push their own beliefs or just to lie, really. Don't use logos to reach truth together. I would relate to them differently than I would relate to someone like you, Meno. Because you, Meno, I would relate to in the friendly way. We're friends. We're reflecting together. We're using words not to fight, but to understand and learn and develop. So for you, Meno, I would use the gentle approach called the way of the dialectician. But for those other people who are heuristic, using words to, or lovers of fighting, or philonikos, lovers of debate bros, pig-headed jerks we might call them today, I would relate to them in a different kind of a way. He said, I've made my case. If you are disagreeing, you have to use the logos to show where it was wrong. You can't just say, I disagree. But he didn't elaborate in that. He went back into the dialectic. So maybe in midwifery, we can learn how to respond in that other category. How do we answer our parents? Especially if, hey, maybe when we were, and there's something we read earlier, if this is how they showed themselves when we were just being ourselves, what would follow if I challenged the whole game? Here. When these authorities emerged from the background of their normalcy and revealed what mattered most to them, they were expressing the point. To the degree that they revealed what mattered most, they were showing the limit of their reach. What does that mean? It means that we also saw what it took for them to reach that state of mind. We also saw it was obvious that the most dramatic feature of the drama was creating the impression that they, the authorities, couldn't go any further. This far and no further. This is a big problem with groups where there's a leader. They have their limit, they have their block, and they'll say this far and no further. It was at this point they drew the line. This is group thinking, so it applies to the pathologos, but generally speaking, it applies to groups, which is why we can identify it within the Parmenides. The Parmenides is the dialectic applied to levels of development of a species. So if this is where we are as a human species, we can look to the Parmenides and say, oh, we're at this level of development, the level of groups. And what's the next level? The logos. So we can recognize where we are here and the next stage we need to go to, using the same dialectic that we've been learning. And of course, if it's the dialectic, if it's the paradigm for understanding itself, it should also apply to evolution of a species. But that's where we are now. You could say we are leaving the fourth hypothesis of the Parmenides. But we haven't got up to that into the Parmenides yet, but that's a little teaser for where we're headed. So, they drew the line, they reached their boundary of their being. The image they communicated was that they simply couldn't be expected to go any further. The looks, the attitude, the gestures all say the same thing: no further. Again, we can ask what this means. It is as if the child is forced into asking this. If they get this upset over that, well, what will they do if I challenge the truth of all of it? If challenging that challenges their very being, challenges their furthermost reach of the logos, then what in heaven's name will they do if the truth they are communicating is challenged, is doubted or rejected? So, that is the stakes of where we got our problem. But even still, if we had the choice to go back, and that's what we do with midwifery, we go back to address it in a way we weren't able to then, we speak up anyway. We challenge it anyway. We risk it all. We risk it all for the self. We risk all the ignorance and the suffering that we will follow, that will follow in our lives, to actually speak up and say, no bollocks to that. What we are going to learn in this text is how we can say it most artfully, with the most logos, with the most dialectic, and really to the heart of the matter, so that we can pierce the heart of this and free ourselves from it completely. Which again is learning a new language. And that will also apply with co-workers. If your manager is saying, this far and no further, you will get fired, you will never work again in this town. And we decide, no, actually no, I'm not, this is, the stakes of this is not worth ignoring for whatever reason. How do we speak up? It's a good question. And of course, as we learn the art, we might gather what Socrates calls charm, or grace. For females, it's grace. For men, it's charm. Even then, so in the Meno, many times Meno has thrown up his hands and said, Socrates, you are a flathead. Even in your appearance, you're an ugly, flat-headed fish. You're sneaky with your words, and if you leave Athens, they'll kill you because you're a sorcerer. Because your words are challenging my beliefs that I am addicted to. And I love being able to give these big speeches about what is virtue. And you are showing me that I don't actually know what I'm talking about? Oh, stupid Socrates. But Socrates uses his art of the logos to somehow dissolve that anger, break that tension. Often he makes a joke. Usually it's a joke that brings everybody up, by the way. Oh, Meno, you're attacking my appearance. I know why you're doing that. Meno says, why? Because you're so good looking. So if you talk about my appearance, you know that I have to go next and I have to make an analogy about your appearance. and beautiful people lead to beautiful analogies. So while you're calling me a flat-headed fish, I'm going to come up with a beautiful analogy because you're so good looking. I'm not going to fall for that, Mino. Let's get back to the dialectic, back to following the logos on our quest together in the gentle art of the dialectic to find the truth about virtue. Socrates does that many times. Can you teach that? I don't know. But it's a fantastic question. Maybe that's the development of the art. Maybe you can keep improving. Hey, maybe you get to a level where you could not just speak up to your co-workers, but speak up to your boss and, hey, go over and talk to Netanyahu and say, hey, I know you're really addicted to these terrible, terrible beliefs. But let's reflect together in this way of the dialectic to actually find the cause of those false beliefs and seek the truth about what is actually good and beneficial and how we should relate to each other. And when you do that, please come back to this channel and share in the chat how well you did. Whether you talk to Netanyahu or your coworker or your boss or your parents or your friends, whoever it is, share your experiences, share your successes, even share your failures. That's part of the fun. That's putting into experience or demonstration. We should probably write this on the board. Demonstration of what we're defining. So let's just quickly jot down on the board the structure of the dialectic. Structure of the dialectic. There are two terms: self or subject, the subject, and other. Now you could say, hang on a second, self and other, isn't this the most fundamental way that you view everything? Before you categorize or think about or understand anything, the very first distinction you make about it is this pen me or another? If I flick this pen, will I say ouch? No. Oh, well then it's not myself. And then I might make other qualities like, oh, it's different and it's the same because it exists, or it exists in the physical world, but it's different because this one has ink and I don't have ink. It has parts. Those parts come together into a whole. So all of these are the terms that we use in the Parmenides, the self-logos terms. But the most fundamental one you could say, maybe, I don't know, but maybe, is self and other. Oh, let's unpause chat. I'm going to go back to your chat questions, but I'm going to take a break to do this. It makes sense because people feel their identity. Oh, yes. Yes, that's what we saw was the end of our lives. If we don't do midwifery, we are in this is the pathologos from our previous section. It's a monad, it's promodramatic scenes, it's cyclical, a bunch of problems linked together in a unity. So the fact that our problems link together in this way means that we can go on that quest to find the origin, to get to the heart of the battleship, we can navigate through all of those TIE fighters on the Death Star to find the was it the air valve that Luke Skywalker found to get to the heart of the Death ship, the Death Star. We can determine the origin. Our beliefs function together as meshing gears. But we are a living dialectic, self to other, with our pathologos. It starts, so the pathologos is the fundamental, unsuspected, wordless, false belief that we think is true about self and reality. Yes, we think it's true, even though beliefs are not to do with truth. There you go. it becomes our basic image, and our whole life is the process of that relationship. So we're talking about what's a good relationship. We've talked about discussion, the friendly art of the dialectic, how to, as you get better and better, have charm or grace in how you develop it. Coming back to this channel and sharing how you did, because we can all benefit from that. We can learn, because it's a good question. How do you share what's true? But it's important that it's a relationship. You keep the conversation open. You keep the words flowing. You don't get it all done at once. We are through time in this human world. So equally so, this is the negative version of that. It starts as a basic image, becomes a mask. You might notice it on your face sometimes, especially when you're most challenged or most frustrated or most blocked. You start to notice lines. Maybe you furrow your brows. Maybe your nose does a thing. Maybe there are hand gestures. Maybe you punch your fist. I really want to get that Johnson's account done by Thursday so I can get that bonus. Or maybe maybe somebody ate your sandwiches, took your sandwiches from the break room fridge. You do this. So, especially around the face, you might notice aspects of your mask, gestures, voice, like tones of voice. These are all clues. Get out your little notebook and write them down. That's living a conscious life. Looking for those clues. Comes your mask, but then it becomes your persona. Notice you're ingraining it more and more. Comes your persona, then it becomes your characteristic way of relating to yourself. So like, there was a comedian, I think in the 80s, Andrew Dice Clay. He was some nerdy guy, but he pretended to be like a leather jacket, I can't do it. I need to work on my Andrew Dice impression. Like a Boston, I don't know if it's Boston guy. Anyway, like a tough guy. Hey, I'm walking New York. A New York guy. Hey, I'm walking here. But then it got such success, that persona gave him so much success as a stand-up comedian, it eventually became his characteristic way of relating to himself and the world. You might notice a lot of, because capitalism is all about grifting or lying to maximize profits, then the people who have a lot of reach right now on media, on TV, in politics, on YouTube, you might notice if you go back into their early career, they tried something out as a joke, but they realized it got them attention, it got them clicks, and then over time it became their characteristic way of identifying with the world. A famous example is Andrew Tate. He's one who is kind of he's so clownishly a representation of the worst traits of a human being. But if you go to his, I think he was on Big Brother 20 years ago, he's misogynist, he's very anti-women, so he appeals to young children who are very easily manipulated and are afraid of women because of their pathologos. So early on in Big Brother, he would just make sexist jokes that he didn't really agree with. It was just a joke. It was stupid, but then he realized that gave him time on the Big Brother television show. So he lent into it more and more. Now he's a accused, or I'm not sure if he's being convicted yet, sex trafficker, abuser of women, misogynist, disgusting, poisonous person. It became his characteristic way. Same thing with a lot of right-wing griftospheres. Russell Brand, right now, we're seeing his timeline unfold. We can call it being audience locked. A lot of older comedians, they realize they're not funny anymore, and instead of trying to learn more logos, develop the insights that helped them be funny when they were young, new insights or logos, instead of continuing that, they got comfortable with their fame, and then instead of learning more, they started becoming right-wingers, appealing to people who were just angry and sexist and racist. You can't say anything anymore. Back in my day, you could tell a joke. You could make fun of women. You could make fun of the Chinese. You can't make fun of the Chinese anymore. It's woke. Oh, it's wokeism. Chappelle, Rogan. I don't know if you could call Joe Rogan a comedian, but Ricky Gervais. Gervais and Chappelle used to be really great comedians until they became locked into this characteristic way of relating to people that served them some benefit. It got them clicks. It got them, the people who are most easy to manipulate are people who are most ignorant, so sexist, fascist, young people. So Andrew Tate and these people sell their course to the most easily manipulated, the people who have a stronger attachment to their pathologos. They're preying on the people with the strongest pathologos, or strongest addiction to the pathologos. That's what it means to be closed-minded. So they're preying on the most vulnerable. And so they have to say pro-Trump stuff, pro-sexist stuff, pro-fascism stuff, because that's what their audience like. We call it being audience locked. So we are seeing that being played out in real time because we happen to be alive at the advent of YouTube, the internet. So we're seeing how these people, even mainstream news networks, it's all clickbait, rage bait we call it. Appealing to people's anger and fear to get clicks and attention that they can then convert into money. So, in a similar way as we're seeing being played out in society, we too are in that. Only the benefit that we get isn't money or clicks or a job on some Fox network. It's a role within the family. It's a characteristic. It's acceptance within the family clan. It's a level of safety. It's a way of expressing yourself. So long as we're yelling, everyone in our house can tell our feelings. Like, hey, why does that family who live across the road, why are they always yelling at each other? Because that's the only way we're allowed to express our feelings in the house. By yelling! Gives you away. That's the appeal of Trump. People who support Trump usually don't know anything about any of his policies, but it gives them a way of expressing their opinions. Oh, I don't like the gays. So that's what we get, and we get audience locked into a kind of solution, a kind of way of being that solved problems for us when we were very, very young, and we were stuck in that family. We were dependent on those people. So we are audience locked in that way, and through our life, it becomes through successive refinements over and over and over and over and over until that image of yourself becomes your mask, becomes your persona. You see old people, their worry lines are really caked into their face. They've been doing it for so long. It becomes your characteristic way of relating to the world, like the audience-locked people we've been talking about. And then eventually it becomes your identity. That's where it ends. How loud are my sound effects? Might turn them up a little bit. Can you hear that? There's supposed to be some sound effects coming in.
Wow.
Neat. Here's my favorite one.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
It's Joe Rogan saying he doesn't want to eat a monkey.
Come on, man.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
So yeah, you're right. It becomes your identity. And Nick, thanks. And that's why, you start to challenge their beliefs. You We start to challenge their identity. So it's interesting and it's worth seeing, because you could say, hey, I don't have Christian beliefs. I am a Christian. So if you show them through dialectic or reason or reflection that these beliefs are harmful or false or limiting them, then you're not just challenging their beliefs, you're challenging their identity. I am a homosexual. I am a Muslim. I am a MAGA. Your identity. And that's interesting because we need to free ourselves from what's false, but also we are on a quest to discover our true self. Which means we don't know it, or at least we've forgotten it. So you're a very good point there. Good thing I don't have a lot of chatters, because each question takes us on a big reflection, which is good. But I don't want people to feel like they're not being heard. Yes, very authoritative, yes, respect, yes. As I've learned in child psychology, it's a demand and children don't do well. Yes, we all have a need for autonomy, we have a need for freedom. So demands conflict with that basic human need, which is also what we need to embrace to reach our truth. That truth of self. So Socrates invites people to play. Yes, anger tied to self-justice. Yes, good point. We're going to see more about hopefully we'll see more about the connection with anger, and we've already seen that that our problems come up because our higher self does not tolerate an injustice against ourselves. So you can say, well, isn't it terrible that we have a pathologos and we have problems that repeat over and over again until we look at it? Well, actually, maybe those problems are being sent to us in order that we do reflect on that negative first cause, that false belief of the self, because the self does not tolerate an injustice about ourselves. And equally so, when that kind of thing comes up in our life, when someone treats you in a way that's very similar to your pathologos, you're more likely to get angry. There's something about that you recognize as an injustice. What? And I think there's an easy example to see this. If you were on a bus and someone bumped into you and you thought you were wronged, there's an injustice. They shouldn't have done that. You get very angry at them. Hey, what are you doing bumping into me? Respect my privacy, you kids, and doing your Fortnite dances, bumping into me on the bus. Why, in my day, we didn't have Fortnite. We had a ball and a stick, and we would catch the ball on the stick, and we were happy with that. Right? But then if you looked closely, and you saw, oh, this person who bumped into me actually has a physical disability, and so it wasn't an injustice against yourself, you wouldn't be angry. You would go, oh, okay, how's it going, mate? Whatever. Hope you're having a good day. But when you think it shouldn't have happened, when you think it was an injustice, that anger happens. Violence, yes, dehumanizing and ostracizing. You have to see them as non-human to enable violence. Yes, every war that started begins with the people manipulating the guys that are carrying out the war for the rich, tyrannical, pathologos-ridden rulers. They tell them, hey, let's give them a name. They're not Iraqi citizens anymore. They are sand monkeys or savages or something like that. Heathens. Yes, and then yes, and that's interesting because their very being is an injustice. So a lot of people in Israel right now are thinking, oh, just the fact that these Palestinians exist is an injustice. It's against God's law or disrespectful. So that's why one of the most terrible and dangerous words is an illegal. How can a person be illegal? Of course, it's just a way of blaming the poor people from the problems created by the rich. and their problems caused by the pathologos. But the word illegal, just by being alive, you are an injustice. Just by being alive, I am angry at you. You're right. Yes, as a woman, you cop it a lot more, so keep in there, hang in there, stay in the game. Even greater challenges that you face, but even greater opportunities once you become free of them. Yes, con artists running people with fear, yes. There's nothing wrong with being political, so long as we see the reason why politics becomes difficult is when you're operating at the realm of beliefs. If you're not operating at the realm of beliefs, you're fine. So there's no talking about religion or politics at the table. Hang on a second. Every single moment we are living under the rule of politics. It's the most important thing to talk about. And the other most important thing is why we're here to begin with. Religion and politics are the things that should be talked about, and they are the biggest tools for oppression so long as we don't talk about them. Why the heck do we don't talk about them? That's the worst thing to say. The problem isn't the subject material, it's literally what we should be talking about all the time. The problem is how we talk about it. Do we voice our opinions? Or do we use the dialectic to together come to understanding? Do we make threats of violence? Or do we use the gentle way of dialectic? So this is our image of the Meno. Am I in the wrong? No, I'm in the right one. So this physical world of becoming, which in our reading of the Meno is represented by Meno, the guy himself. Opinions and beliefs. Well, it's my opinion that the Broncos are the best football team. Okay. That's the end of the conversation. I either already agree with your opinion, and so I will nod. Okay, yep, go Broncos. Bronx all the way. Or I will say I disagree, and that's the end of that conversation. Or what's something we can understand and reach a higher level of meaning? Well, who's actually winning the league? We can both look at the table. Now, of course, that's a metaphor. We could both look at the table and say, oh, Broncos have the most points so far, so they are the superior team. That's understanding. It's something that's objectively true that we can together reach, and we're both better off. Hey, what are you doing liking the Broncos when they are the worst team in the league? I said, well, actually, I know. But I like them because my dad liked them, and when I was young, he took me to a game. Oh, a loyalty to early beliefs from childhood and your parents? Ooh. Now, with sports, it doesn't matter. But as soon as it becomes politics or religion, then politics is the physical world, religion is the spiritual world. Well, religion is belief, so we want to go from beliefs to understanding. Religion means to be bound by a saving belief. That's what it means. The problem is we are using beliefs. Beliefs have nothing to do with truth. I believe the Broncos are going to win it this year, but they've got the least points. I know, beliefs have nothing to do with truth. Well, why do you believe it? Because I love the Broncos. I love them. I'm addicted. I know. They lose every year, and I cry. Oh. Us Broncos fans, we're real sadists. Ha 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 ha. But I love them. They're my team. Yes. That's how they talk, and they know it, and they make fun of it, and whatever. I don't know how the Broncos are doing. Maybe the Cowboys, whoever. But we know this. Beliefs and opinions have nothing to do with truth. It's to do with loyalty to old beliefs. Now, up the ante. Politics. I believe capitalism is good. I believe socialism is bad. But that's got nothing to do with facts. I know I'm silly. And if you believe in if you agree with capitalism, you are going to be enslaved. And if you lived in a country that has socialism, you'd be much happier, much more well off, less crime, less likely to be put in jail yourself because of poverty. Every metric of happiness you would have would be objectively better. I know, but my dad was capitalist, and I want one day to be a banker, and I want to rip off other people. I'm not really poor. I'm a temporarily embarrassed billionaire. I want to exploit people too. I know. Same thing. Except with the Broncos objectively being the worst team, people say that, but with capitalism or religion, I know. There's no rational. I know the world's not 5,000 years old like it says in the Bible. I know it's silly. I know that there is evidence of dinosaurs, clearly. But I don't believe it. I'm silly. I know us Christians are persecuted for being silly, but we're sadists, really. They should be saying the exact same thing about their Broncos team. But then you can have a real discussion. Okay, I know you love the Broncos, but let's actually talk about, because this is meaningful. We have a position within the Football Federation. We have to organize who goes to the playoffs. We can't allow your beliefs and your opinions that Broncos are the best to allow the Broncos into the playoffs. That would be corruption. The whole system would fall apart. You get the top 5 teams in the playoffs, and the 6th team is the Broncos, which is the worst team. Because I love them, and my dad loves them, and it's so great. The whole system would fall apart. You can't do that. You can't do it when it matters. My state goes bananas when they win. Oh, you're Colorado. Is that the Broncos? I need to pay more attention to chat. Yeah. Colorado Broncos? Denver Broncos. Yes, actually, you are the Broncos. How are they doing this year? So exact same thing, but we have to recognize the difference between belief and understanding, which is the difference between images and logos, which is why I have no clue. Everyone talks about them when they win. Yeah. So we talked about the levels of development that we can recognize in the Parmenides hypotheses, and ours being group thinking, which is the same level as the pathologos, which is an identifying and loyalty to opinions and beliefs that put you in a group. I am Team Broncos. I am Team MAGA. I am Team Christian. I am Team My Family. Whatever your last name is. And to get out of it, all we have to do is recognize the difference between beliefs and dianoia, which is a new word, which means understanding what's truth. Yes, it's tribalism, absolutely. Now, our way from beliefs to truth, which is, by the way, that's the realm of being, which is always true. It's eternal, which means every moment there's a possibility to experience the truth about reality. Enlightenment is open at every moment because it's always there. It's always the same. It's the principles that are needed. Gravity always works. 2 and 2 is 4 is always true. So it's the principles and it's the creation of our physical world. Something had to create our physical world. And that's what we look to when we want to understand in philosophy. But same too with religion and politics. So long as you recognize the difference between beliefs and truth, or the logos, then you have fantastic discussion. Every discussion would be not with certainty, I'm certain that Trump is the one, but it would be with openness and curiosity to follow the logos, follow reason and evidence to reach the truth about what's eternally true. And if it's eternally true, it's true for everyone, so everyone benefits. No one is excluded. Beliefs exclude people who are not part of the team. If you don't believe in Jesus, you can't come to the Christian picnic. You just can't. It just doesn't work. It's very exclusionary. So you can genocide a group of people, but aren't they exactly the same as you? Human beings who get a pathologos from birth, from childhood, and are here to learn the logos, like every single one of us. That's why we call it the destiny of man is for everyone. It's everyone's destiny. Hey, even an alien species would be on the same destiny. Even an alien species might have a false belief and would be here to learn the truth. Everyone plays. Well, how can you genocide us if we're all the same? Oh, because we can distinguish based on group identity, based on beliefs. So we should be talking about politics and religion, so long as we recognize we are doing it to go from beliefs to truth through understanding or the dialectic. Together through the dialectic. The following the logos with the dialectic, that's called dianoia. That's what we're learning. Now, as you do that, you might recognize an aversion to doing that. I don't want to understand. I like being a Broncos fan. Shut up. And if you ask me questions that might challenge my false belief in the Broncos, I will punch you. Then, same thing. We are learning together. We can use the dialectic together and follow the logos to find the false belief that's preventing you from your own development, keeping you stuck in ignorance. That's the pathologos. That's what we are doing on this channel here. So lots of words, but yeah. Love happens when we stop asking who deserves it. Ooh. So you could say there is a kind of love. I love my beliefs. I love my mum and dad. I love my Broncos. I love my Jesus. That's a kind of love with that understanding. But what kind of love? And by the way, that causes problems. That causes genocide. That causes enslavement to capitalism. I love capitalism. I love money. But then we can ask the question, what good is love then if it causes all these problems, causes our loyalty to our beliefs? And if that's the cause of all suffering and problems, love is a very terrible thing. Without understanding. So if love without understanding, love at the level of opinions and beliefs down here, causes all the suffering and human problems, what kind of love would there be if it wasn't beliefs? But understanding, love and understanding. I was told by my pastors I'd never be a real Christian because I question and explore other religions. Evangelists don't like that, yes. Right, that's one of the features of the pathologos. Be a real Christian, yeah. You have to silence reflection. You silence anything that challenges what's false. That's why fascists go after thinkers, people with glasses. They like to burn the libraries. That's why right now Trump is trying to get beliefs which are nothing to do with truth, and usually in opposition to truth, which is why you have to enforce them by threats of hell, being let's read prayers in schools. Let's remove the books and put in the Bible. Why? It makes an ignorant population which is more easy to be manipulated. Simple as that. Same thing with the pathologos. It's a nice reflection. So jumping back into this, amnesia. There's an amnesia. Amnesia because it wasn't put into words. We have to use the dialectic to put into words, which is a new language. A wordless transmission is where we are. If the scenes from which the pathologos emerge contain elements that can be recalled relatively easy, the conclusions drawn from those scenes take more reflection and repeated examination. It's a relationship. Keep the relationship going. Stay in the race. There's going to be ups and downs. There are going to be hurdles. And there are going to be good times. By the way, that's courage. Don't be distracted from the game, the race, the true game.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
By pleasures or pains, fears or desires. That's courage, as Socrates talked about in the Republic. Now, what was really interesting is he said, you know what's even the worst? Pleasure. Pleasure is more likely to take you off course than pains. When you're in pain, suffering, you can be like, oh, I hate this, but I know it's for my own good. I'm only going to get out of my pain and suffering if I stay in the Logos and I stay in reading the Path of Logos, because that's the only way out. But pleasure, ooh, that can be very enticing. So that's courage. Stay in the game. I never know what I am or what I believe. I want answers, but I feel sometimes I can get in my own way. Level of complacency. Yes, these are important qualities. Complacency, comfort, familiarity. These are pleasures that can keep you stuck in what's false. That's right. We want to sacrifice, which is why having an art is important. So going back to your first question, how do we communicate with this to the people who are most challenged or the most blocked or the least likely to communicate? And we said, well, Socrates had this art which involved grace or charm, which is also excellence. I say the same thing to my music students. You have to be pursuing excellence. Don't settle. Otherwise, you'll get complacent and you won't surface your blocks. And in the music industry, there are a lot of very famous examples of people who have success without addressing their pathologos blocks. It blows up in their face, literally. So, seeking excellence, ideally in the Logos, that's the highest art. Even music is a reflection of the art of the Logos. But seeking excellence keeps you going, gives you an inspiration, gives you a motivation to get off the couch, get out of your comfortable state of mind, get over those complacencies. So yeah, good seeing. Yes, pleasure is difficult. Yes, that's right. We put ourselves in the boxes. So even though it was a wordless conclusion that we didn't suspect, and even though it was all set up, the whole pathologos origin scene was orchestrated, and all of the states of mind and the ways of being in the house were all orchestrated, so that you come to this false conclusion, which is the family false conclusion, which is the way we are, one of us, even though it was all set up and the odds were stacked against you, you still came to that conclusion. You didn't know, you didn't put it in words, no questions were allowed. This is the wordless nature, but it was still you that did it, which means you have the ability to free yourself. I'm trying to tear the ceiling. Yes, go beyond the ceiling. See where you go. Yes, that's a good attitude, because having the inspiration is part of it. We're human beings. So Socrates talks about the ultimate. We have it on the board. Let's put it on the board. Here we go, Hermes. So us reading together is Apollo. So this is called the anagogic triad. So these very principles we are talking about, because it applies to the Logos and the Pathologos, you could represent them as mythology or storytelling, or if you write stories, you can write a story about it. Mythology, which is an analogy of the principles. Analogy of principles of Logos, which is the terms, and dialectic, which is the structure or relationships. So the relationships between the gods, dialectic. So, in reading, we're doing Apollo. It's also a spiritual yoga. It's a method because we're reading what's there. So every time we project something that's not in the text, we can recognize it and try and get rid of it. So we're clearing up the seeing. You could say enlightenment is simply seeing what is. But we have to go through that unknowingness, through that confusion, through those projections to finally get there. So we're practicing that. We're doing a yoga as we read. But you can't just read. We're human beings. We have to have inspiration, motivation. That's represented by Aphrodite. Apollo represents the reading. He's the god of philosophy. Socrates talks about him in the Phaedo. And we also have to have reasons. We have to have reasons to push ourselves past those pleasures. Don't eat that 16th cookie. Don't watch that next episode of anime. Have a couple. Don't be sadistic. But then get into the Orange Book or get into the stream or whatever it is that you are doing to develop the logos. But you have to have the inspiration, making it personally meaningful and inspiring. But also Aphrodite comes when you see those pieces. So when we're reading, we're pulling out all these pieces. Just like in life. You might recognize thoughts and states of mind that come up that are positive or negative. Usually the positive are harder to see. Write them down. That's your Sherlock Holmes notebook. But you could say that's Apollo. But then you have to reflect on it to see how those pieces come together into a whole for an insight that frees you from your pathologos or brings you up the ladder to higher states of being in the logos. When you see that and you're excited by it and you see the beauty of the pieces coming together into a whole and you see that we live in a reality that is understandable, our world is able to be pieced together into a whole, it's part of reality, that's Aphrodite. That excitement at seeing that beauty of the wholes, the parts coming together into a meaningful, beautiful whole. You need both. Aphrodite and Apollo. So if you want to get some tattoos, get Apollo on one, and then on one set of knuckles, and then Aphrodite on the other, and punch the logos into people. No, you're not going to punch them. Put them on your hands, and you can clap and cheer as they do Apollo and Aphrodite. And if you have both, this is a triad, both Apollo and Aphrodite, you're pulling out the logos terms, learning the new language in an open, curious state of mind, and you are reflecting on it to see how they come together into insights. You could say this is definition, this is demonstration, this is understanding, this is experience, this is dianoia, this is a state of mind or nous. Many ways, which is why we collect triads. That's our skill tree, because you'll see, oh, this triad fits onto all these other triads I have. And these become the parts that you can place on top of each other and get a super mega triad. That's why we talk about when we read, we don't have the picture. Okay, we're gonna have to do a picture. This is us as a philosopher. We have our wizard's hat, and we have our face. Ugh. And because normally I do a male wizard, but because we have a female in chat, we'll make this wizard a lady wizard. I'm not really used to drawing female hair. Oh, this is a disaster. Okay, how about this? It's gonna have to do. And then got the wizard's cape on. Okay. I'm really struggling with my drawing today. How about this? That's us. Put our wizard's hat on. Already today we've talked about the significance of gathering questions, either asking it to people who are stuck but acting in unjust ways. It might allow them to help them gain ousia. So we could say ousia, this kind of self-reflection, ousia, is what we need. We've talked about seeking excellence. If we're not seeking excellence, if we're not pushing ourselves to reach our highest state of being, our highest goals, our highest mastery of this art of the dialectic, so always seeking excellence, then we're going to get stuck, or we're going to get complacent, we're going to get addicted to our tasty pathologos problems, which is why often people who grew up really handsome and rich and well-connected and privileged have a harder time sacrificing their pathologos because there are so many pleasures attached to it. But that's courage, seeking the truth, not getting addicted to pleasures and pains, or desires and fears, which is the anticipation of them. Excellence. Seeking excellence. This is what it means.
You're a wizard, Harry.
But also, we have our skill trees. Skill trees. Just like in a video game, you develop your skill trees, which are your skills as you go. But our skill trees are patterns. So 2s, 3s, we've been talking about some triads. Now these triads, you can add as a branch of the skill tree. For 4s, and even 5s. But also 1s, because we saw the pathologos is a monad, which is a oneness. So look for these patterns. And over here we have this pattern of Apollo and Aphrodite, because that's what we're talking about, the motivation to keep going, to push through that ceiling. And if you have the two of them together, you can reach the excellence that we're seeking. Another word for excellence, if you want to be fancy, is hyparxis. Hyparxis is the top of that pyramid, the top of that triad, the fullest flowering, the highest ideal, the excellence that we get, the true art, the highest art that you could have from our Apollo with Aphrodite, from our reading with our inspiring beauty that we see when we can fit it together, the parts and the whole, the understanding and the states of mind, the dianoia, the nous, all of these duads. All I'm doing is going back into my skill trees of 2s and pulling out all these 2s which happen to fit on each other. Wow. Which is exciting. If you have them together, then you can reach, so the 2s become a triad. Hermes, which is the god. We call this the anagogic triad, because anagogic means upward moving. Takes us back to our highest goal. Hermes races us back to where the gods live. And what takes us back? What's our method? What's the archetype of spirituality? What's the highest ideal we could reach, perhaps as human beings? The dialectic. So yeah, it's what we've been talking about. The significance of finding something to inspire you, Aphrodite. And also, you can apply this too. So what you discover in your reading of this orange book and the Balboa version of Socrates that we do on the channel, you can apply it to see how they come into a whole. Neat. So we're learning how to describe, we're learning a new language, and we are, so some things from our early scenes we can recall, some aspects of our problems we can recall, but it's a dialectic, it's a relationship. So we keep going to gain more insights, more Aphrodites, more conclusions, take more reflection to link them together until conclusions are revealed that because of their linkage that were never suspected. That's our skill trees. So as I was reflecting then, I was engaged in Aphrodite. And as I was linking together other conclusions, which I put in my skill trees, I was making linkages that maybe were never suspected. And so I was gaining new understanding. Just in that little review, which is neat. And we also do the same with our problem. They surface background thoughts of everyday life, and upon reflection, they can be identified as familiar thoughts and images. That's our piecing together the clues. So one of the ways of putting together your clues of your thoughts and images that come up, that block you in your day, or make you sad in your day, is themes. Any repeating themes? Repetition, repeated criticisms. Do you always call yourself a dumbhead? Interesting. So dumbhead is a key term. Repetition. Okay, and that's the most visible aspect. The way it manifests is easier to see. When the subjects make a statement describing the nature of their present problem, these very elements often reappear as criticisms and condemnations of ourselves. What does that mean? The way that you currently understand your problem is probably going to be your pathologos. I know why I have my problems. I've got it all figured out. Well, you don't. Sorry, you don't. Until you master this art. But the way that you condemn yourself, I know why I have a problem, I'm always so lazy. Hang on a second, is that a condemnation of yourself? Yeah. Is that understanding your problem relative to the fundamental pathologos you don't know you have? No. Oh, not only is it wrong, it's a kind of criticism of yourself. Lazy. Just like un-American or disrespectful. It's a way of vilifying yourself, which is what's needed for violence. It's a way of explaining the problems by vilifying the human beings in it as a way of not actually solving the problems. If we wanted to solve problems in our society, we would address the cause. Capitalism, wealth inequality. It's not rocket science. It's very, very easy. Our society and capitalism is run by scammers and sociopaths, to use one of those words that vilify people. And that's caused by pathologos. It's simple, but we don't want to solve problems because the people in charge of making the laws are those people who think they're benefiting, and they're not. They're harming themselves and their souls and the species. They're not benefiting at all, really. So what do? We call the people who suffer from capitalism criminals. We vilify the individual as a way of distracting from the true cause of the problem. It's tyranny. So when you call yourself lazy, you're being a tyrant to yourself. You're not lazy, you're a human being. You have the same desire and propensity towards Apollo mastering the Logos and Aphrodite experiencing all the joy and pleasure and inspiration of actually solving the puzzles that you get as human beings as everyone else. You're not lazy. You are a human being. You have a pathologos causing your blocks and an ability to find the logos. It's just pathologos and logos, which is the dialectic, both. So, the way that you solve your problem can be seen to reflect the very problem itself, which takes us to that quote that we like from Einstein. You can't solve a problem with the same way of thinking that caused the problem. Okay, this means that statements about the nature of a problem reflect those archetypal past scenes from which the pathologos was generated. So the way that you talk about the problem, and so your description of the question or puzzle, and your solution to the problem, your answer, so your question and answer reflects the problem. And this is great because we can understand that our problem is reflected in fundamentally two kinds of things. The way we understand the puzzles we're here to collect as human beings, and the way we understand solutions. Hey, what's a puzzle? How do we live together? That's not the way Netanyahu sees the puzzle. The puzzle is, how come there aren't Muslims? See, his puzzle, the way he understands the question, is tainted interpretation, projection by his pathologos. And what's the answer? Just kill them. Because America gets to. That's what he always says. How come we say we've got Hamas, and doesn't that give us license to just do whatever we want? That's what America does. Why are we being attacked? Anti-Semitism. We orchestrated or created the conditions for Hamas to do that thing, our 9/11. So now that we created this problem, don't we get to do whatever we want because we're scamming people the way other people scam? It's like capitalism. Create a problem, offer the solution, charge money. And if you criticize us, it's not fair, it's anti-Semitism. So the solution, doing a genocide, is also a reflection of their problem. Hey, has there been a history of genocide within the Jewish population? Interesting. So not only is the question tainted by our pathologos, so is the solution. That applies to humans and therefore politics, because politics are run by humans. But for us, it's ourselves as well. So the way we understand our own problems, which means we have to keep an open, curious, reflective mind about what our problems actually are, so that we can find the questions and also what the answer is, so we can find the true answers. So we've got two things. Back to the board. Two things. We are generating questions from a certain state of open, zoom in a bit, open, curious, puzzled, wondering, or using the Mino, stung state of mind. And we got a fancy word. Sometimes we like to be fancy. We have a fancy word, aporia, from our reading of the Mino. Aporia. It's a fancy word for this state of mind. So, we need it to be on this quest. The archetype of the hero's journey, the quest that we're all here for, and the thing that's copied by media and video games and books and Sherlock Holmes and
I'm looking for someone
Lord of
to
the
share
Rings.
in an adventure.
And The Hobbit.
Sneaky little hobbitses.
So, developing questions from the state of mind, but also answers. What do we call answers? Ifs. Because they're hypotheses. Now, answers in the realm of being are those all-at-once experiences of knowingness that we call enlightenment states. But in our physical world, you can't know it for certain. And you might have a collection of possible answers. And as we saw about pathologos, it's a network of problems and beliefs and cogs in a machine. So you might have a very good Aphrodite seeing of the whole, but you might see a better one tomorrow. It's a relationship that's constantly devolving. You're constantly improving. You're constantly improving your art. You're continually seeking excellence. You're continually reflecting on yourself. Ousia. So what do we call our answers? Hypotheses or ifs. We take them in our sack and we carry them with us as well. So these are our questions and our hypothesis sack that we carry in our inventory with us. So we are building an idea of what it means to read, what it means to be a human being on the quest that we're here for. But also in midwifery, we're seeing what happens if we don't have it. If we're not asking questions, the conditions for the pathologos. If we're not having logos and conversations and reflections and discussions in words. We are being a tyrant or creating the conditions for our pathologos. If we are certain that I know the answer to my problem and I know what my problem is, you're stuck. I have no need for Ousia. I know the Broncos are going to win. I've got a pretty comfortable life. I don't have to keep seeking excellence. These are all things that can keep you stagnated or stuck or in a problem or even functioning like a tyrant to yourself or to others. So, 2 reasons to be on this quest. 1, all the lovely, amazing goodies, enlightenment, bliss, knowing the meaning of life, knowing the nature of self, preparing yourself for your next incarnation, knowing what's going to happen when you die, all of these sorts of things. A charming way of being where you can actually help people. Art. All of these are the positives you get, but also if you're not in the game, you're going to get negatives. Because you're always in some sort of relationship. It's either with the logos or the pathologos. So 2 kinds of reasons why we love to play the game. Okay, so our statements about the nature of the problem, the puzzle, what's our puzzle? What's your problem? What's your question? What's your puzzle? And the way that you answer it. Reflect the archetypal past scenes from your life and also your criticisms and condemnations, which is the easy to see surface of your pathologos. It should be borne in mind that the fundamental reason the problem is a problem is because the subject, without knowing it, is constantly trying to understand the present in terms of the past. The false analogy. We think with analogies. Only we're carrying a false analogy. Our present is like the past. It ain't. It's a solution that kind of worked when we were young, but the world isn't the same. Which is why people project. When somebody starts saying things like, everyone always blah, 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 it's usually not everyone. It's usually your parents or your family. You're projecting. People are very different in lots of ways. Nobody likes a smartass. Really? I like people who are intelligent. And I like people with a nice ass. So maybe that's not true. Maybe you're projecting the kind of thing. Hey, when you were having an insight, did somebody say, hey, no one likes a smartass, shut up? So, our problem is caused because we are interpreting, taking us back to what we saw earlier. And we're reflecting on the word respect. We are interpreting, we're projecting. We're taking our personal beliefs and projecting or interpreting it onto the world. And then, of course, they become the demands, and then you use words like respect or inappropriate or un-American to justify your anger against them not obeying your personal preferences, and then that allows for violence, which subjugates the self, squashes your self-goals, your self-seeing, your self-enlightenment, and politically, same thing. So what we are doing now is true spirituality. So instead of that, where we said, hey, don't talk about politics or religion at the table. You can keep the religion thing, because religion means belief. What we are doing is understanding. So we are addressing the question of soul and spirituality and meaning, not through stupid beliefs. And I say stupid beliefs because beliefs are stupid. But I love them. Yes, you love something stupid. Sorry, that's not personal. And I say stupid because beliefs have nothing to do with truth. They are, by definition, stupid. Yes, many of them are harm. Yes, beliefs are also very harmful because they're the cause of our problems, as we are learning. Obviously, because as we see in the Meno, you can trick people to believe the bad thing is good and therefore seek the bad thing. But if you understand something, you can't be tricked. You can't be grifted to. You can't be scammed to. You have it yourself. So anyone who says, hey, beliefs will save you, they are scamming you. If you have understanding, why believe someone else? If you know it, you're not a slave to somebody else's dumb opinions or grift. So, hey, no religion at the table. Yeah, great. Another way of saying that is, don't appeal to beliefs as a way of answering questions that are most important. Still talk about spirituality at the table, every table, even over coffee with your friend. And so I have a drink of coffee, and it's a bit of fun. Same thing, politics. Politics is the everyday world expression of the same issue. So the logos, philosophy, is understanding the soul and how we live. Project that into society, that's politics. Project it onto society, it's spirituality, not religion. Religion's belief. So we should be talking about the most meaningful things, so long as we're using it for the logos, which is exactly what we're here for.
Wow.
So always logos, always understanding. Otherwise, we are causing our problems. Why? Because that false belief that we love and we're addicted to or attached to is something from our past that we are using analogously to understand our present. That's the cause of our problems. Since the conclusions contain elements that are contradictory with your primary belief systems, they can remain incomprehensible to the subject and cause distress and grief. I tell everyone that they should reach their highest goals, they should live their dreams. Why don't I do it? I tell everyone to be nice, but why do I beat myself up? That's grief, that's distress. The way we have come to understand ourselves, the images and attitudes we present to others, are all based on those primary beliefs about others. We talked about that today. Our images, attitudes, masks, way of presenting ourselves. Hey, like Dice Clay. Hey, I'm a walk in here. This was just an act, and then people seemed to like it, and then I became my whole identity. Hey. That's us. But we can't see it as well as we can see it in him. As much as different colored threads are about one's problem. So there's a tapestry. So all of these things we could also take as clues. Oh, I like presenting myself this way. Whenever I say an insult, I will diminish myself. I don't like presenting myself as being intelligent. Oh, interesting. I'm going to add that to my notebook of clues that I carry with me everywhere. Now we have cell phones, so you can even use that as a notebook. But and by the way, same thing with meditation. You're meditating, you're sitting, however you meditate, whatever you like to do. Dialectic is meditation. If you're sitting on a mat or whatever, have a notebook under your pillow. And if your meditation is counting to 10 or counting 10 breaths, and you get distracted at 3, pull out that notebook, write down the clue, put it back. The conclusions one draws about one's current problem or puzzle or question are then as confused as the parts are irreconcilable. Very confused. But we need to embrace that confusion because we know, Hey, I know the world teaches us, hey, if you act certain, that's what people think it is to be wise. And maybe get you a good job or something. But we need to embrace the confusion because that's part of being on the quest. Puzzled. Embrace the confusion and read the Meno with us. They seem to be answers, but they don't function like answers. Yes, that's a big one. I know my problem. Well, if you knew your problem, you wouldn't have your problem. In other words, the answer you think is an answer isn't functioning as an answer, so it's not really an answer. Because they simply don't work, and they can't work. We're reading it why. Because that certainty or that loyalty to what we love, even though it's not true, even though it's just a belief, and even that way of being we might love. Hey, I love it. It gets me all the stand-up gigs now, says Andrew Dice Clay. I'm getting better than my impression of him. By the way, I never saw his stand-up. I just know of him because that was his life. He put it on as a mask and then it became his way of being. But we can see it in other people. Like, just, you throw a rock. Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, anyone in that right-wing griftosphere. It starts as an act and they realize, oh, the right-wingers like it when I say this stuff. And then they become what we call audience locked or whatever, and becomes their way of being. Okay, how we present ourselves. The conclusions are as confused as the parts are irreconcilable. They seem to be answers, but they don't function like answers. They don't work and they can't work. We repeatedly give ourselves the same answers to the present problem, yet the problem persists. That's that quote that some people like to use. Doing the same thing, expecting a different answer is a definition of insanity. That quote. Yeah, it's just a silly quote, but we are understanding the true principle. The answer isn't an answer. It reflects your problem, your true problem, because it persists. In the past, these answers worked. All right, this is the solution that used to work. So our problems are actually solutions that no longer work. It used to work at home. They were the ones we offered ourselves, and they obscure the event. They should work now. They worked at home in the past, but they fail now. Like whenever I called myself a piece of garbage, then my mum and dad would let off. They would stop abusing me or whatever. Because that was their goal. Teach you, hey, don't you know you're a sinner? I grew up in a Catholic school and we are all sinners. Unless you realize you're stupid and you're bad, I'm going to keep hounding you. So if I just say that I'm stupid and bad, I'll get let off? Yes. Oh. So that solution doesn't work in the real world. No one wants to hang out with you if you keep saying, oh, I'm so stupid and bad. Jesus, man. What a downer. You're no fun at parties. No longer applies. You can't reach your highest goals if you think you're stupid and bad. Doesn't work. The ensuing confusion and the ambiguities we face bring us to the thought that there is something unknowable. Right, so the conclusion is, and therefore these things that used to work that don't, means that the world is unknowable. There is no logos. You can't know the nature of the self. You can't reach your highest goals. The devil exists. There is some sinister force that's doing badness. There's always going to be war in the Middle East. There's always going to be wars between religions. There's always going to be wars between the Broncos and the Cowboy fans. Garbage. That's garbage. All of those conclusions are garbage, but also a consequence for not realizing that your answers are not answers. They're reflections of your problem. All those things, right. We do live in an understandable universe. In fact, on page 36, let's reread the opening because it's so good. It is entirely possible to verify for ourselves that we do live. We are a part of a caring and intelligible universe. It's a kind of proof. since it is a way of understanding that's based upon a realization, understanding Apollo, realization Aphrodite, that our mind constantly communicates with us for our benefit. Our mind is working like Hermes, inviting us to a dialectic should we play. And the better we learn how to play, the better we can play. The better we learn football, the better we can play football. The better we learn the dialectic, the better we can communicate with the mind that's constantly communicating to us to help us. That's the dialectic. Same things with dream analysis. Dream analysis is same thing. We haven't got into dream analysis on the channel, so we'll ignore that for now, but later on we will. It's a way of understanding that's based upon a realization that our mind constantly communicates with us and for our benefit. The communications from the mind are as profound as they are utterly appropriate. That's how come we can make the clues. Every block, every thought, every word that comes up is a clue. It's profound, leading us to Aphrodite, but it's appropriate, Apollo. So from this, you can create some triads or duads or triads that you can put into your skill tree, that you can overlay onto Apollo and Aphrodite if you like. Have some fun. So, pervasive and personally significant. Pervasive and precise. Could that fit with Aphrodite and Apollo? I don't know. It's for you to have fun with. We will demonstrate that our choice of goals, the problems we face, the daydreams or fantasies we have, and the dreams that visit us in our sleep, I mentioned that earlier, each and every one of them are like doorways into the richest source of insights into our life. How do we open the door? That's our question. And that's what the hypothesis we're carrying. To answer that question, the if is it's the dialectic. But we don't know until we see it. It's not a belief. It's a hypothesis we carry and we apply, demonstrate to see it for ourselves. If the mind is communicating with us in this way, pervasive and precise, all the time, constantly, appropriate, profound, personally significant, and each of them, and the goals we choose, the problems we face, the daydreams or fantasies we have, and the dreams that visit us in our sleep, if they're all rich doorways, how do we open that door? Well, we're going to be learning that art, and it goes back to the first question we got today. How do we communicate to the people who are close to this, especially if they're being jerks? Same thing. The art of the dialectic, maybe. How well can we master the art of the dialectic? To open those doors, even doors with co-workers. Maybe the fact that we're running into this conflict with the co-worker is part of the mind communicating with us. Maybe it goes all the way, even into our physical world. That's a puzzle we can carry with us. We can put it into our question sack. Are even physical encounters with physical people the mind communicating in that profound, pervasive, precise, personally significant, a lot of P's way? Even physical people. Another P. Put that in a question sack, which is an inventory which we carry with us. What we discover through these insights is that the mind itself provides ample evidence of its own goodness and intelligibility. So goodness and intelligibility, that's another duad. You can add that into your skill tree. But the answer to the question, those questions that we are carrying and those hypotheses we are building and carrying, the mind will answer it. You don't have to go to the guy in the funny hat at the church or the synagogue or wherever, mosque. Mind will give you the answers. Reality will give you the answers. So long as we learn this new language of communication that we are doing here, which we are calling the dialectic or the art of the logos. So, well, this was supposed to be a quick reflection of this section, but so much gold, which is okay. This is the Aphrodite. So see all these highlighted parts? That's the Apollo. So we read it, we pull out these parts, we talk about it the first time, and then the review, it's Aphrodite. We're piecing it together. And because we're fortunate to have friends in the chat today, we have personal experiences, personal events that can allow us to do Aphrodite. Allow us to take these pieces that we're reading and apply it to our real world, our everyday world. Aphrodite. And we need to be doing both. Otherwise, it's just a dry, boring text, and why are we reading it? It has to apply to our life. It has to apply to our life in the most significant way. To inspire us, to motivate us, for it to be worth getting off the couch, for it to be worth sacrificing our old images, our old masks. Hey, even this one. Yes, even that one dies. It has to be significant in that kind of a way. So the reflection today has been on that note. Doing the Aphrodite to our Apollo. All of the highlights remind us that we did the Apollo last time. And so that's been today. Next time, we'll finish this reflection and get on to anger and blame. In fact, today we have come to some interesting puzzles about anger. We talked about anger today. We talked about blame. Who's to blame for our problems? Do we blame the guy who bumped us on the bus because he actually is disabled? So do we not blame him? And therefore we're not angry? We talked about this causal chain of violence that is as true politically and globally for our species as it is true for our souls. But who is to blame? These people that we call enemy images? The savages? The women's? Those nasty women with their sensual ways? Oh, the devil, I say. Are they to blame? Or our beliefs and preferences to blame? Or the pathologos to blame? What should we be angry about? Or, if anger comes at this stage, is it telling us, hey, you're angry? You're not there yet. Your anger tells you you have a problem, but is a reminder to trace this map back to the cause. Find the cause. That's understanding, by the way. Your toaster is broken. Do you yell at it? Do you get angry at it? Do you start a group? Start a political movement to genocide all the toasters? No. You look at the cause of the problem and you address it with rationality and maybe justice. How do you approach a toaster with justice? I guess fairness. You fix the right circuits, but it's all to do with understanding the cause. So that's been our stream for today. Thank you so much for joining me. And next time we're going to finish off our review of the wordless nature which keeps our problem hidden. We saw a lot today of the big one, our question and answer. How we approach questions. Hey, do you have a problem because the world stinks? The world is unintelligible? Uh-oh, that's a false conclusion because you don't have the art of the logos yet. So what? That means you need to change your question seeking. Give up that certainty. You can't know the meaning of life. You can't solve political problems. You can't stop the war in the Middle East. You can't overcome capitalism. Bollocks, 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 bollocks. You can. That's a false conclusion. You need to address your questions. Find a puzzle. The way that you understand your puzzles or problems and the way that you answer your problems and puzzles also reflect your pathologos. So keep this open state about both, while carrying them. So we have to be creating questions and creating hypotheses as we go, but also reflecting on, hey, do they reflect especially about my problems? So these apply to our to truth of reality, that's philosophy, applied to our problems. If you're not in midwifery, can reflect the problem itself. So they are clues. So how we understand our problems and how we answer them can even give us clues. So that's important and worth seeing today and worth reflecting on. Hopefully you gain some Aphrodite fun out of that. An interesting kind of fun. It's not pleasure we talked about pleasure being comfort, stopping us from challenging our beliefs or stopping us from learning the Logos or doing midwifery. That is pleasurable, but it's a curious kind of pleasure that it's a kind of an absence of pain. You're comfortable. You don't have to go through the pain of being confused. But is that true pleasure? Because the pleasure we're getting here from this reflection and these insights last our entire lives. But not only that, because these are principles that apply to all people, it's a kind of learning and pleasure that can upgrade our way of being in a way that can last beyond even this lifetime, maybe beyond even this species. So you don't have to have the pain to contrast it against. It's just an insight. It's just the pleasure or joy that comes from an insight, from seeing what's true. You don't have to go back to being confused to compare it. Like if you're starving, you haven't eaten all day, but then you have a meal. The fact that you're comparing it to how painful it was makes the pleasure even greater. Or you've got a sore tooth, and then fixing it gives you a lot of pleasure because it's been contrasted with the pain. But normally you don't get pleasure from having teeth. But this pleasure is a different kind of pleasure. So Apollo and Aphrodite on our road to mastering the art, which was our question today. How do we use this? The art of Hermes, the art of dialectic. But also the kind of pleasure we get from this journey, from reading, from Aphrodite, from Apollo and Aphrodite, from reading and seeing it. A new kind of pleasure that has nothing to do with pain. You don't have to get back down into pain if you hold on to your insights, if you don't counterattack them. But also a kind of pleasure and learning and development we can take with us every single day, every single moment, and even beyond this lifetime. The pleasure of Hermes. The hyparxis of our learning. Great reflection today. Thank you once again for our lovely members in chat. GoldenEye, thank you for sharing your thoughts. And I hope to see you all next time. Feel free to join the Discord if you want a notification when we go live. You can join on YouTube and Twitch if you want to also join the chat and share with us. Thank you once again. Bye.